The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and dreamed of the day they would travel among the distant lights. In 2347, that dream finally came true. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the Pathfinder, humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, and watched as unknown space stretched before her. Beside her, Admiral Marcus Webb checked the scanners for the 100th time that hour. Still nothing, Marcus said, his voice tight with anticipation. "We're truly alone out here," Sarah smiled. "Maybe we're the first. Maybe we're the only intelligent life in the universe." She was wrong. 3 days later, the Velcros found them. Their ships appeared without warning, massive and dark like mountains of metal floating in space. The Pathfinder's communications officer received a message in perfect English, though no human had ever met an alien before. The message was simple and cold. Primitive species detected. Prepare for incorporation into the Velcros Galactic Empire. Resistance will result in termination. Marcus immediately sent a message back to Earth, but he knew it was too late. The Velcros ships moved faster than anything humanity had ever built. Within hours, they had tracked the Pathfinder's route back to Earth. The invasion of Earth lasted 18 days. Humanity threw everything they had at the Velcros fleet. Nuclear weapons, railguns, every defense system ever designed fired at the alien ships. Nothing worked. The Velcros had shields that made human weapons look like toys. Their own weapons cut through Earth's defenses like paper. High Imperator Zarthun watched the conquest from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was a tall being with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. His species had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. He had overseen the subjugation of 47 species. Humans would be the 48th. "They fight well for primitives," his second-in-command observed, watching as human pilots threw their ships at the Velcros fleet in suicide runs. Zarthun waved a dismissive hand. "Desperation makes even the weakest creature dangerous. It means nothing. Break their resistance. Spare only those useful for labor." The bombardment began that night. Major military installations around the globe were destroyed in minutes. When the governments of Earth tried to negotiate, Zarthun had their leaders executed and broadcast the deaths worldwide. His message was clear. Humanity had no power here anymore. Sarah was on Earth when the invasion happened. She had returned just 2 days before the Velcros arrived, presenting her findings to the United Nations. Now she watched from her apartment in Geneva as the sky burned. Her hands shook as she tried to call her sister in Tokyo. The call wouldn't connect. She never learned if her sister survived. Marcus was captured during the final defense of the Pacific Fleet. His ship, the Valiant, took heavy damage protecting a convoy of civilian transports trying to escape Earth. When his engines failed, Velcros soldiers boarded his vessel. Marcus and his surviving crew fought hand-to-hand in the corridors, but it was useless. The Velcros soldiers were stronger, faster, and armored with technology humanity couldn't match. They dragged Marcus and his crew off the Valiant and threw them into transport ships with thousands of other prisoners. No one spoke. The humans sat in silence, watching through small windows as Earth grew smaller behind them. The Velcros wasted no time putting humanity to work. Earth became a processing center, where humans were sorted by their skills and physical condition. The old, the very young, and the sick were killed immediately. The Velcros saw no use in feeding mouths that couldn't work. Sarah was classified as a scientist and sent to a research facility on Kepler 442b, a planet the Velcros had terraformed centuries ago. The facility sat deep underground, carved into the rock. Thousands of humans worked there, mining rare elements used in Velcros technology. Sarah's job was to help optimize the mining processes. She was good at her work, which kept her alive. Marcus was sent to a labor camp on a moon called Pharaoh 7. The camp housed 15,000 humans who built components for Velcros warships. The work was brutal. Humans worked 16-hour shifts in the assembly halls with minimal food and no medical care. Those who couldn't keep up were killed and replaced. Marcus watched hundreds die in the first year alone. He saw young men and women, soldiers who had fought beside him, waste away until their bodies gave out. He saw children barely old enough to walk, forced to sort small components until their fingers bled. Something broke inside him during those months, but something else grew harder. Years passed. 5 years became 10. The Velcros Empire continued its expansion, barely noticing the human population that served them. To Zarthun and his kind, Humans were just another resource, no different from the minerals they mined or the food they grew. But the Velcros made a mistake. They assumed humans were like the other species they had conquered. They assumed humans would accept their fate and break under the weight of slavery. They were wrong. In the mining shafts of Kepler 442b, Sarah met an engineer named Tom Rodriguez. Tom had been a telecommunications specialist before the invasion. He was thin now, his face hollow from years of poor nutrition, but his eyes were sharp. One day, while they worked side by side in Shaft 17, Tom leaned close and whispered, "There are others who remember Earth, others who want to fight back." Sarah's heart hammered. "That's suicide. They'll kill us all." "They're killing us anyway," Tom said. "Just slower. Listen, we've been building something. A network. Communicating between camps. Between worlds. We're not alone anymore." Over the following months, Tom introduced Sarah to the Resistance. They called themselves the Chain, because they linked humans across dozens of worlds. The Chain used salvaged Velcros equipment to create secret communicators. They smuggled messages between camps, sharing information and keeping hope alive. Sarah's scientific knowledge made her valuable to the Chain. She began studying Velcros technology in secret, taking extra time on her assignments to understand how their systems worked. She made a discovery that excited her beyond measure. Velcros technology was advanced, but it was rigid. Their computers followed strict hierarchical programming. Their ships required specific genetic signatures to operate. Everything in their society was built on the assumption that only Velcros could use Velcros technology. But Sarah found that human brains were different. Humans had something the Velcros didn't: incredible neurological flexibility. The human brain could adapt and interface with systems in ways the Velcros never imagined. It was a small advantage, but it was something. On Pharaoh 7, Marcus had become a legend among the prisoners. He had survived longer than almost anyone in the camp. He protected the weak when he could, and organized the workers to resist small abuses. The Velcros guards beat him regularly, but they never broke him. One night, a new prisoner arrived in Marcus's barracks. The man was young, barely 20, but he carried himself like a soldier. He approached Marcus carefully. "Admiral Webb," the young man whispered. Marcus looked up. No one had called him Admiral in years. "That rank doesn't mean anything anymore." "It does to us," the young man said. He pressed something small into Marcus's hand. It was a communicator, no bigger than a coin. "The Chain sent me. We're ready to start fighting back, sir. But we need leaders. We need you." Marcus looked at the device in his palm. For the first time in years, he felt something other than despair. He felt anger. Clean, focused anger. "Tell them I'm in," Marcus said. "Tell them we all are." Across the galaxy, on 47 different worlds, humans were having similar conversations. The Chain was growing, and the Velcros Empire, in its arrogance, noticed nothing at all. The time for revenge was coming. 15 years had passed since the Velcros conquered Earth. An entire generation of human children had grown up knowing only slavery. They had never seen their homeworld free. They had never known what it meant to live without fear of their masters. But the Chain made sure these children knew the stories. They made sure every human remembered what had been taken from them. Sarah Chen had changed over those 15 years. The soft scientist who once studied stars now had calluses on her hands and scars on her back from Velcro's punishment whips. But her mind remained sharp. In the deep research facility on Kepler 442b, she had become something the Velcros never expected: a master of their own technology. The Velcros made Sarah work on improving their mining equipment. They wanted her to make the machines more efficient, to extract more resources faster. What they didn't know was that every system she touched, she studied. Every piece of code she wrote, she kept a copy. Every security protocol she encountered, she memorized. Tom Rodriguez remained her closest ally. Over the years, he had built the Chain's communication network into something remarkable. The small communicators had spread to 47 worlds. Thousands of humans could now pass messages between camps, sharing information and coordinating their efforts. "We intercepted something big," Tom told Sarah one night as they huddled in a maintenance tunnel. His hands shook as he showed her the datapad. "The Velcros military database, everything. Fleet positions, supply routes, defensive installations. And Sarah, we found it. We found Velcro Prime. We know where their homeworld is." Sarah's breath caught. The Velcros had kept the location of their homeworld secret from all conquered species. It was their final security measure, ensuring no slave race could ever strike at the heart of their empire. "How did you get this?" she asked. Tom smiled grimly. "We have people everywhere now. A maintenance worker on a military vessel, a translator at a command center. We've been invisible for so long they forgot we can see and hear everything they do. The information changed everything." The chain's leadership called for a secret meeting, transmitted through quantum-encoded messages that the Velcros couldn't intercept. Leaders from dozens of worlds participated, their faces appearing on hidden screens in secret locations. Marcus Webb appeared on Sarah's screen. She hadn't seen him in 10 years. He looked older, harder. Scars covered his face and arms, but his eyes still burned with the same intensity she remembered from the Pathfinder. "We need to talk about what comes next," Marcus said without preamble. "We've been gathering intelligence for years. We've been building our network, but we just received information that changes everything." He paused, his jaw tight. "The Velcro's High Command is planning a cull. They think there are too many humans now, too expensive to feed and house. They're going to kill 70% of us over the next 2 years." Silence fell across the communication network. Sarah felt her stomach turn cold. "When?" someone asked. "They start in 6 months. They'll begin with the oldest and weakest, then move to any camps they consider less productive." Marcus leaned forward. "We're out of time. If we don't act now, most of us will be dead before we get another chance." A woman from the Arcturus mining colony spoke up. "What can we do? We have no weapons, no ships. They'll slaughter us if we rebel." "They'll slaughter us if we don't," Marcus shot back. "But you're wrong about one thing. We do have weapons. Sarah, show them." Sarah activated her presentation. On screens across the galaxy, humans watched as she displayed her research. "The Velcros built their technology to be used only by them," she explained. "Their neural patterns, their genetic signatures, everything is locked to their biology. But I've discovered something. Human brains are different. We have greater neuroplasticity. We can adapt to their systems." She pulled up a simulation. "I've been working on something called Project Prometheus. It's a neural interface that allows human minds to directly connect with Velcro's technology. With the right training, a human pilot could control not just one ship but multiple ships simultaneously. Our brains can process the information in ways theirs can't." "How many have you tested this on?" someone asked. Sarah's expression darkened. "Just myself. I've been using it secretly for 2 years. It works, but it's dangerous. The neural load is intense. Without proper training, it could kill someone." Marcus nodded slowly. "We'll need volunteers, people willing to risk their lives to become pilots for the Resistance." "I'll do it," said a young woman on one of the screens. She looked barely 20. "I'll volunteer," others joined her. Within minutes, hundreds of humans across the galaxy had volunteered to test Sarah's neural interface system. Over the following months, the chain transformed from a communication network into a true resistance movement. Sarah trained volunteers on the neural interface system. Tom built weapons from salvaged Velcros equipment. Marcus organized cells into military units, teaching young humans everything he knew about tactics and warfare. The Velcros noticed nothing. They saw what they expected to see: broken slaves doing their work. They had conquered so many species over their history that they had become complacent. They believed no slave race could threaten them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Marcus chose the date carefully, a Velcros holiday called the Day of Ascension, when they celebrated their dominance over the galaxy. The Velcros would be distracted, their guard down. It was the perfect time to strike. On 12 worlds simultaneously, the chain launched their uprising. On Pharaoh 7, Marcus led 3,000 humans in an assault on the main garrison. They fought with stolen weapons and tools turned into clubs. The Velcros guards were caught completely off guard. For the first time in 15 years, humans killed their masters. On Kepler 442b, Sarah and Tom seized control of the research facility. Sarah used her knowledge of Velcro systems to lock down the security grid, trapping the alien overseers inside their own command center. Other humans stormed the armory and distributed weapons. The rebellions weren't perfect. Hundreds of humans died in the initial fighting. But they succeeded. For the first time since the conquest, humans held territory. They had weapons. They had ships. News of the uprising spread through Velcro space like fire. High Imperator Zarthun watched reports come in from his flagship, his 4 hands clenched in rage. How did this happen? He demanded. How did these primitives organize without our knowledge? His intelligence officer looked terrified. We don't know, Imperator. They somehow built a communication network we couldn't detect. They've been planning this for years. Zarthun struck the officer across the face, sending him sprawling. Send the fleets. Crush these rebellions. I want every human involved killed. I want their bodies displayed as a warning. But something else was happening that Zarthun didn't know about. Other species under Velcros rule had been watching. They saw humans, the newest and supposedly weakest slaves, fighting back. They saw humans winning. Messages began arriving at chain communication hubs. Species with names humans couldn't pronounce reached out, offering information and support. The Velcros Empire had made enemies of everyone they conquered. Now those enemies saw hope. The most significant message came from a Velcros junior officer named Kelvon. He had served on Pharaoh 7 before the uprising. He had watched humans die in the labor camps. He had watched children work until they collapsed. Unlike his superiors, Kelvon had actually paid attention to the humans under his command. He had seen their intelligence, their resilience, their capacity for sacrifice. I cannot participate in this anymore, Kelvon's message said. What my people are doing is wrong. I am sending you everything I know about our military operations in your sector. Use it well. Marcus read Kelvon's message 3 times. A Velcros officer willing to betray his own people. It seemed impossible. But the intelligence Kelvon provided was real and valuable. Maybe they're not all monsters, Tom suggested. Marcus shook his head. Most of them are, but maybe we can use the ones who aren't. The chain's next operation was even bolder. Marcus personally led an assault on a Velcros fleet anchored near the Arcturus sector. Using Sarah's neural interface pilots and Kelvon's intelligence, they attacked from an unexpected angle, overwhelming the fleet's defenses before the Velcros could react. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, humans controlled an entire Velcros fleet, 23 warships, 5 carriers, and dozens of support vessels. Marcus stood on the bridge of the captured flagship, looking out at the fleet he now commanded. Human crews scrambled to learn the controls, guided by the neural interface pilots who could understand the systems intuitively. Send a message to all Velcros worlds, Marcus ordered. Make sure Zarthun hears it personally. The communications officer nodded. What should it say? Marcus smiled coldly. Tell them you taught us to hate. Now we'll teach you to fear. The message spread across the galaxy within hours. Every Velcros world heard Marcus Webb's words. Every conquered species heard them too. The humans, the weakest and newest slaves in the Empire, had captured an entire fleet. The impossible had happened. High Imperator Zarthun called an emergency meeting of his war council. 30 of the most powerful Velcros commanders gathered in the throne room of the Eternal Dominion. Zarthun's rage was terrible to behold. They are insects, he hissed. Primitives who learned to fly barely 2 decades ago. How can they threaten an empire that has stood for 10,000 years? Admiral Kethzar, the oldest military commander present, spoke carefully. Perhaps we underestimated them, Imperator. The humans have proven more adaptable than previous slave races. Adaptable? Zarthun's voice rose to a shriek. They should be broken. They should be crawling on their bellies, begging for mercy. He slammed all 4 fists on his throne. I want them destroyed. Not enslaved anymore, destroyed. Pick 3 worlds with the largest human populations and prepare for orbital bombardment. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. The War Council dispersed to carry out their orders. 3 worlds were selected. New Harmony, a planet where 50,000 humans grew food for the Empire. Pharaoh 7, where Marcus had first led the rebellion. And Kepler 442b, where Sarah's research facility had become a center of resistance. Sarah learned about the bombardment plans through the chain's intelligence network. She was in her laboratory when the message came through. Her hands went numb. They're going to kill everyone, Tom said beside her, his voice hollow. 300,000 humans gone. Sarah's mind raced. The Velcros bombardment ships were already en route. They would arrive in 72 hours. There was no time to evacuate. No time to run unless they fought. Get me Marcus, Sarah said. Right now. 20 minutes later, Marcus's face appeared on her screen. He was on the bridge of his captured flagship, which he had renamed the Defiance. I heard, Marcus said before Sarah could speak. We're already moving to intercept. You can't fight a bombardment fleet with 20 ships, Sarah protested. They'll destroy you. Then what do you suggest? Marcus's voice was hard. We let them kill 300,000 people? We let them win? Sarah took a deep breath. No, we use Project Prometheus. I've trained 30 pilots so far. They're ready. With the neural interface, each pilot can control multiple ships. If we had more ships, we could face the bombardment fleet with equal numbers. We don't have more ships, Sarah. Then we steal them. The plan was insane. Sarah proposed attacking a Velcros shipyard facility in the Talus system. The shipyard had 200 vessels in various stages of construction and repair. If the chain could seize the facility, they would have a fleet large enough to stop the bombardment. Marcus studied the tactical data. The shipyard has 8,000 Velcro soldiers defending it. We have maybe 2,000 humans who can fight. Those are bad odds. Everything we've done has been bad odds, Sarah replied. We're still here, Marcus smiled. Fair point. All right, let's steal ourselves a fleet. The assault on Talus shipyard began 36 hours later. Marcus split his forces into 3 groups. He personally led the frontal assault, drawing the Velcros defenders' attention. Meanwhile, Sarah and a team of neural interface pilots approached from the system's asteroid belt, hidden among the rocks. The third team was something new. Tom had reached out to the alien species who had been contacting the chain. 5 species had sent volunteers to help humanity fight. Insectoid quarks, aquatic nethril crystalline shardkin, the massive borlog, and the telepathic whispers. Together they called themselves the Liberation Front. The battle for Talus shipyard was brutal. Marcus's frontal assault hit the station's main defenses hard. The Defiance and her sister ships pounded the station's shields while human marines launched boarding pods. The fighting in the station's corridors was savage and close. Humans fought with rifles, knives, and their bare hands against Velcro soldiers. Sarah's team made it to the shipyard's docking bays undetected. Her neural interface pilots spread out, each one connecting to multiple ships simultaneously. Sarah herself connected to 10 vessels at once. The sensation was overwhelming. She could feel each ship as if it were an extension of her body. She could sense their power plants, their weapon systems, their engines. Systems online, she reported. We have control of 147 ships. Get them out of there, Marcus ordered over the communication link. We're getting torn apart out here. Sarah's fleet launched from the shipyard like a swarm of angry hornets. The Velcros defenders weren't prepared for an attack from behind. Sarah's pilots, controlling multiple ships each, struck with coordinated precision that the Velcros couldn't match. Their tactical computers couldn't predict what the humans would do because the humans didn't fight like any species the Velcros had encountered before. The Liberation Front forces hit the station from the third angle. The quarks were exceptional at electronic warfare, disrupting Velcros communications. The Nethril, adapted to move through liquid, could navigate the station's flooded maintenance sections. The Shardkin could interface directly with computer systems. The Borlog were simply unstoppable in hand-to-hand combat, and the Whispers coordinated everyone through silent telepathic communication. After 8 hours of fighting, the shipyard fell. Marcus stood in the station's command center, surrounded by human, quarks, nethril, and Shardkin soldiers. Bodies of Velcros defenders lay everywhere. How many ships can we move? Marcus asked Sarah. 215 are operational. The rest need repairs, but we can have them ready in a few weeks. Marcus nodded. Get the pilots on board. We need to intercept that bombardment fleet before they reach their targets. The race was on. The bombardment fleet consisted of 300 Velcros warships, including massive dreadnoughts designed specifically to destroy planets. They were already approaching New Harmony when Marcus's expanded fleet arrived. The Battle of New Harmony would be remembered as the turning point in the human resistance. For the first time, humans faced the Velcros not as desperate rebels but as a real military force. Sarah sat in the neural interface chair on the Defiance's bridge. Her consciousness spread across 15 ships. The sensation still made her dizzy, but she had learned to handle it. Beside her, 29 other pilots sat in similar chairs, each controlling multiple vessels. All ships, this is Admiral Webb. Marcus's voice came over the communication system. The Velcros have come to destroy our people. They think we're weak. They think we're primitives who don't deserve to exist. Today, we show them the truth. Today we show them that humanity will never bow again. The fleets crashed together like waves meeting in a storm. The space around New Harmony lit up with weapons fire. Velcro's dreadnoughts fired their massive bombardment cannons, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable. Sarah's pilots danced around the larger vessels, striking at weak points and engines. The Velcro's commanders couldn't understand what they were seeing. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. In a way, they were. The neural interface pilots could communicate and coordinate at the speed of thought. One of the Velcro's dreadnoughts broke through the human defensive line and aimed its cannons at New Harmony. Sarah saw it happening. She redirected 5 of her ships, throwing them directly into the dreadnought's firing path. The ships took massive damage, but they bought enough time for Marcus to bring the Defiance around. "Fire everything," Marcus ordered. The Defiance's weapons, combined with concentrated fire from a dozen other ships, pierced the dreadnought's shields. The massive vessel broke apart in a series of explosions. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Velcro's bombardment fleet was destroyed or retreating. Not a single bomb had fallen on New Harmony. Marcus collapsed into his command chair, exhausted. Around him, the bridge crew was cheering. Humans were crying, hugging each other, celebrating their victory. Sarah disconnected from the neural interface and immediately vomited. The strain of controlling 15 ships through combat had pushed her to her absolute limit. Tom was there immediately, supporting her. "We did it," Tom said, his voice full of wonder. "We actually did it." Sarah wiped her mouth and smiled. "That was just one fleet. Zarthun has thousands more. Then we'll beat those too," Tom replied. Across the galaxy, other species watched the Battle of New Harmony. They saw the humans win. They saw the Liberation Front working together. Most importantly, they saw that the Velcros could be beaten. Rebellions began breaking out on worlds throughout the Empire. The Quarks rose up on their homeworld. The Nethril seized control of their ocean colonies. The Shardkin sabotaged Velcros installations across a dozen systems. High Imperator Zarthun watched his empire begin to crack. He retreated to Velcro Prime, calling back his scattered fleets. If the empire was falling apart, he would make his final stand at its heart. "Let them come," Zarthun told his remaining commanders. "Let the humans and their pathetic allies come to Velcro Prime. We will destroy them all at once." Marcus received intelligence about Zarthun's consolidation. The chained spies reported that over 10,000 warships were gathering at Velcro Prime. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Ships gathered from across the galaxy. The Liberation Front brought their forces. 600 Quark stealth fighters, 400 Nethril submarine carriers adapted for space combat, 300 crystalline Shardkin drones, 200 massive Borlog assault ships, and the Whispers, whose telepathic abilities would coordinate the entire fleet better than any computer system. Combined with humanity's captured and stolen fleet, they numbered over 2,000 ships. It was the largest force ever assembled against the Velcros Empire. But it was still nothing compared to what waited at Velcro Prime. Sarah worked around the clock training new neural interface pilots. The technology was spreading fast. Humans had a gift for it that surprised even her. Young people who had grown up as slaves, their brains shaped by constant adaptation to survive, proved to be exceptional pilots. They could handle more ships, process more information, and react faster than anyone expected. One pilot, a 19-year-old named Lisa Park, could control 23 ships simultaneously. It should have been impossible. The neural load should have killed her, but Lisa had grown up in the mines of Kepler 442b. Her brain had adapted to the constant danger, the split-second decisions needed to survive. Now that adaptability made her the most dangerous pilot in the human fleet. Marcus spent the week planning the assault with his command staff and the Liberation Front leaders. Kelvon, the Velcros defector, was there too. He had proven his loyalty many times over, providing intelligence that saved thousands of lives. Still, some humans looked at him with hatred. Marcus understood. Kelvon wore the face of their oppressors. "The defensive grid around Velcro Prime is the most sophisticated in the galaxy," Kelvon explained, showing tactical displays. Automated weapon platforms, minefields, patrol fleets, and the planet's own surface-to-space batteries. "You would need 10,000 ships to breach it through conventional assault." "We don't have 10,000 ships," Marcus said. "So we need an unconventional assault," Sarah spoke up. "What if we didn't need to breach the defenses? What if we made the defenses breach themselves?" Everyone turned to look at her. She pulled up a data pad, her fingers flying over the screen. "I've been studying Velcro's computer systems for 15 years. I know how they think. Their AI systems are built on rigid hierarchies. Every system reports to a higher system. Every command must be verified through proper channels. It makes them efficient, but it also makes them vulnerable. She displayed a complex program. I call it Ragnarok Protocol. It's a virus, but not like any virus the Velcros have encountered. It doesn't destroy their systems. It makes the systems think they're following proper orders. It could make their defensive grid turn on itself. How long to deploy it? Marcus asked. That's the problem. I need to physically access the main defense network. It's too secure to hack remotely. Someone needs to get to the planet's surface and plant quantum beacons at 3 key points. Once the beacons are active, I can upload Ragnarok from orbit. Marcus nodded slowly. A ground assault. On the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. I'll lead the team. Tom volunteered immediately. No, Marcus said. I will. Sarah started to protest, but Marcus held up his hand. I'm not going to ask anyone to do something I wouldn't do myself. Besides, I've been preparing for this. Give me a team of 50 volunteers and we'll get your beacons planted. The fleet departed for Velcro Prime 3 days later. As they traveled through jump space, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about everything that could go wrong. The plan required perfect timing. If Marcus's team couldn't plant the beacons, the fleet would be destroyed. If Ragnarok Protocol failed, the fleet would be destroyed. If the Starbreaker was activated before they could stop it, Earth would be destroyed. Too many variables. Too many ways to fail. Tom found her in the observation deck staring out at the swirling colors of jump space. You should rest, he said. You'll need your strength for the battle. I can't stop thinking about everyone who's going to die, Sarah admitted. Humans, Quarix, Nethril, all our allies. We're leading them into a meat grinder. They chose to come, Tom replied gently. Every person in this fleet knows the risks. They're here because they believe in what we're fighting for. Freedom, justice, the right to exist without bowing to tyrants. Sarah turned to look at him. When did you become so philosophical? Tom smiled. 15 years of slavery gives you time to think. The fleet arrived at Velcro Prime exactly 1 week after departing. The planet hung in space before them, a beautiful blue and green world surrounded by rings of metal. The defensive grid was even more impressive in person than on tactical displays. Thousands of weapon platforms, hundreds of patrol ships, minefields that stretched for millions of kilometers, and behind it all, 10,000 Velcros warships waiting in perfect formation. High Imperator Zarthun stood in the command center of the Eternal Dominion, watching the human fleet arrive. He felt no fear. Let them come. Let them throw themselves against Velcro Prime's defenses. They would break like waves against stone. All ships prepare to engage, Zarthun ordered. Show these primitives the full might of the Velcros Empire. But he made a mistake. He assumed humans would attack conventionally. He assumed they would do what every other species did, charge forward and try to break through by force. Instead, Marcus launched his ground assault first, 50 stealth pods, coated in Quarix technology that made them nearly invisible, dropped from the fleet toward Velcro Prime. The Velcros detected them too late. By the time the defensive grid adjusted to target the pods, they had already entered the atmosphere. Marcus sat in the lead pod, gripping his rifle. Around him, 49 other humans checked their weapons and equipment. These were the best soldiers humanity had. Veterans who had survived the labor camps, young fighters who had known nothing but rebellion, and volunteers who simply refused to let the Velcros win. The pods screamed through the atmosphere, shaking violently. Velcros interceptors chased them, but the Quarix stealth technology kept confusing their targeting systems. Most of the pods made it through. 7 were destroyed, their crews vaporized instantly. Marcus's pod crashed in the forest outside Velcro Prime's capital city. He was first out, weapon up, scanning for threats. The other survivors emerged quickly, forming a defensive perimeter. Teams 1 and 2, head for the eastern beacon point, Marcus ordered over his communicator. Team 3, you're going to the northern point. I'll take Team 4 to the central command hub, move fast. We have 3 hours before the main assault begins. The teams split up, disappearing into the alien forest. Marcus led his 15 soldiers toward the capital. They moved quickly and quietly, using terrain for cover. Velcros patrols passed nearby, but the humans stayed hidden. They reached the edge of the capital 2 hours after landing. The city was massive, towers of crystal and metal reaching toward the sky. Velcros civilians walked the streets, going about their business. They had no idea that their empire was about to fall. Marcus's team slipped into the maintenance tunnels beneath the city. Kelvon had provided detailed maps. The tunnels led directly to the Central Defense Network hub. It should have been more heavily guarded, but the Velcros never imagined anyone could reach this far into their homeworld. They encountered guards only once. 6 Velcro soldiers on patrol. The fight was quick and silent. Knives in the dark. Bodies dragged into side passages. Marcus didn't feel good about it, but he didn't feel bad either. These soldiers had chosen to serve the Empire. They had made their choice. The Defense Network hub was a massive room filled with quantum computers. Sarah had told Marcus exactly where to place the beacon. He pulled the device from his pack and activated it. The beacon was the size of a fist, covered in Quarix technology. Beacon 1 active, he reported. Confirmed. Sarah's voice came over the communicator. Reading your signal. Beacon 2 just went active. Waiting on Beacon 3. They waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. Team 3 report, Marcus said into his communicator. Nothing. Team 3, do you copy? Static. We lost them. Sarah's voice was tight. The 3rd beacon isn't active. Marcus, without all 3 beacons, I can't deploy Ragnarok. The virus won't spread properly through the network. Marcus looked around the hub. His mind raced. What if we could access the network directly from here? Could you deploy it through a hardline connection? There was a pause. Maybe. But someone would need to stay there and maintain the connection. The Velcros will detect the intrusion immediately. Whoever stays won't make it out. Marcus looked at his team. 15 soldiers looking back at him. Young faces, old faces, all of them understanding what needed to be done. I'll stay, Marcus said. Sir, no, one of his soldiers protested. That's an order. Marcus cut him off. Get back to the extraction point. Tell Sarah to start the upload the moment you're clear, and tell her something for me. Tell her thank you. For everything. The soldiers hesitated, but orders were orders. They filed out of the hub one by one. Marcus watched them go, then turned to the network terminal. He pulled out the connection cable Sarah had given him and plugged it into the port. I'm connected, he told Sarah. Ready when you are. Above the planet, Sarah sat in her neural interface chair, tears streaming down her face. The Liberation fleet poured through the chaos of Velcro Prime's self-destructing defenses. Ships that should have been firing at the invaders were instead shooting at each other. Minefields that should have torn the fleet apart were detonating harmlessly in empty space. Ragnarok protocol was working even better than Sarah had hoped, but the Velcros still had their main fleet. 10,000 warships began moving to intercept the Liberation forces. The space around Velcro Prime became a storm of weapons fire, explosions and dying ships. Sarah sat in her neural interface chair, her consciousness spread across 18 ships. The sensation was overwhelming. She could feel every hit her ships took as if it were her own body being wounded, but she pushed through the pain. For Marcus, for humanity, for every person who had suffered under Velcros rule. Her ships moved like a school of fish, weaving through the Velcros formations. The neural interface pilots could coordinate in ways no traditional fleet could match. When one pilot's ships were threatened, others moved to support without needing orders. They thought and acted as one mind. Lisa Park, the young pilot who could control 23 ships, was devastating. Her vessels struck like lightning, hitting weak points before the Velcros could react. She lost 3 ships in the first hour of battle, but destroyed 14 enemy vessels in return. The Liberation Front forces were equally impressive. The Quarix stealth fighters infiltrated Velcros formations and sabotaged ships from within. The Nethril carriers released swarms of small attack craft that overwhelmed point defense systems. The Shardkin drones could take massive damage and keep fighting. The Borlog ships simply rammed Velcros vessels, their reinforced hulls turning them into massive projectiles. And through it all, the Whispers coordinated everything telepathically. But the Velcros had numbers on their side. For every ship the Liberation fleet destroyed, 2 more took its place. Slowly, inevitably, the Liberation forces were being pushed back. High Imperator Zarthun watched from the Eternal Dominion with grim satisfaction. The humans and their allies were fighting well, but they couldn't win. They were outnumbered 5-1. It was only a matter of time. Prepare the Starbreaker, Zarthun ordered. Target Earth. Let the humans watch their homeworld die. The Starbreaker was the largest ship in the Velcros fleet, nearly 50 kilometers long. It had been designed for one purpose, to destroy entire planets. Deep within its core, massive gravity generators could create a focused beam that would penetrate a planet's crust and ignite the core. Within hours, the planet would tear itself apart from the inside. Sarah saw the Starbreaker begin to move on her tactical display. Her blood ran cold. "Tom, the Starbreaker is activating." Tom was coordinating the Liberation Front's movements from the bridge. "Can we stop it?" "Not in time. It's heading out of the system. Once it jumps to FTL, it'll be at Earth in 72 hours. Sarah made a decision. She started disconnecting from most of her ships, concentrating her consciousness on just 3 vessels. "Fast attack ships with powerful engines. What are you doing?" Tom demanded. "Going after the Starbreaker," Sarah replied. "I'm the only one fast enough to catch it. You can't take on a ship that size with 3 fighters." "I don't need to destroy it," Sarah said. "I just need to board it." She pushed her 3 ships to maximum speed, breaking away from the main battle. The Starbreaker was already accelerating toward the system's edge. Sarah's ship screamed after it, engines straining. Other neural interface pilots saw what Sarah was doing. Without being ordered, 12 of them broke formation and followed her. 36 more ships joined the pursuit. They weren't going to let Sarah face the Starbreaker alone. The chase lasted 40 minutes. The Starbreaker's escort ships tried to intercept them, but the human pilots were too fast, too maneuverable. They wove through weapons fire like needles through fabric. Sarah brought her ships alongside the Starbreaker's hull. "Everyone, target the docking bay doors." Concentrated fire, the ships opened fire on a single point. The Starbreaker's armor was thick, but under sustained fire from 40 ships it began to crack. Finally, the docking bay doors buckled and tore open. "Now," Sarah ordered. Her ship dove through the opening, the other vessels following close behind. They crashed into the Starbreaker's internal hangar, crushing Velcro's fighters and equipment. The pilots emerged from their ships immediately, weapons ready. 200 humans against a crew of 5,000 Velcros. Sarah didn't like those odds, but there was no choice. They had to stop the Starbreaker before it could jump to FTL. The fighting inside the Starbreaker was brutal. The corridors were narrow, giving the humans fewer advantages. But they were fighting for their homeworld, for their families, for Earth itself. That gave them something the Velcros didn't have: desperation. Sarah led a team toward the engine room. If they could disable the FTL drive, they could buy time. Velcro soldiers tried to stop them, but the humans pushed forward through sheer determination. Bodies fell on both sides. The corridors ran red with blood. Lisa Park's team made it to the bridge. She kicked down the door and opened fire immediately. The Velcro's command crew died in seconds. Lisa ran to the navigation console and started working. She wasn't a scientist like Sarah, but she knew enough to mess things up. "FTL drive disabled," Lisa reported over the communicator. "It'll take them hours to fix it." "Good," Sarah replied. "Now we need to retarget the weapon." She reached the Starbreaker's core control room. The gravity generators hummed with barely contained power. Sarah had studied the schematics Kelvon provided. She knew how the targeting system worked. Her hands flew over the controls. "What are you doing?" Tom's voice came over her communicator. He was still back at the main battle. "Retargeting the Starbreaker," Sarah said. "If we're going to fire this weapon, we might as well make it count." "Sarah, that weapon destroys planets." "You can't—" "I'm not targeting civilians," Sarah interrupted. "I'm targeting Velcro Prime's military infrastructure. The shipyards, the military bases, the command centers. I'm evacuating the civilian areas first." She accessed the Starbreaker's communication system and broadcast a message to the entire planet. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth. The Starbreaker weapon is now under human control. All Velcro civilians have 1 hour to evacuate the following coordinates." She listed the military installations across Velcro Prime. The civilians had time to get away. The military did not. High Imperator Zarthun heard the message from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. His face twisted with rage and fear. No, this cannot be happening." His tactical officer looked terrified. "Imperator, the Starbreaker is charging. We have 47 minutes before it fires." Zarthun looked around at his commanders, the great and mighty Velcros Empire, brought to its knees by former slaves. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. But it was happening. "All ships," Zarthun's voice was hollow. "Fall back to the planet. Protect the surface installations," but it was too late. The Velcro's fleet tried to regroup, but the Liberation forces pressed their advantage. The Whispers coordinated a massive assault that split the Velcro's formation. Ships that had been fighting together for thousands of years were suddenly scattered and isolated. Tom watched from his command console as the battle turned in their favor. All ships advance. Don't let them regroup. The Liberation fleet surged forward. The Quarks and humans worked together to take down the larger Velcro ships. The Nethril and Shardkin overwhelmed the support vessels. The Borlaug ships smashed through the Velcro's lines like hammers. On the surface of Velcro Prime, civilians fled the cities. They packed into vehicles and ships, racing to get away from the military zones. Most of them made it. Some did not. But Sarah had given them a chance, which was more than the Velcros had ever given humanity. The Starbreaker fired. The beam of focused gravity hit Velcro Prime's surface at the largest military shipyard. The effect was instantaneous. The ground opened up like a flower blooming. The shipyard, along with 3,000 warships under construction, fell into the growing chasm. Then the beam moved, carving across the planet's surface, targeting military base after military base. The planet's crust cracked. Magma began flowing from the wounds. But Sarah had been careful. She had targeted only the military installations. The civilian cities were untouched. When the Starbreaker's weapon finally powered down, Velcro Prime still existed. But its military capability was gone. Destroyed. Annihilated. High Imperator Zarthun stared at the screens showing his homeworld burning. Everything he had built, everything his species had accomplished. Gone. A human vessel approached the Eternal Dominion. It was the Defiance, the flagship Marcus had commanded. Tom was on the bridge now, having taken over after Marcus's death. High Imperator Zarthun, Tom's voice came over the communication channel. Your fleet is destroyed. Your military infrastructure is gone. Your empire is broken. I'm offering you one chance. Surrender now and your civilians will be spared. Fight on and we will destroy everything. Zarthun's hands clenched. His pride screamed at him to fight to the last ship, but he looked around at his bridge crew. They were exhausted, defeated, and they were looking at him, waiting for him to make the choice. High Imperator, one of his advisors said quietly, we have lost. Further resistance will only kill more of our people.